Alright, what's going on, guys? As we get closer and closer to the eventual DLC for Elden Ring, one of the things I'm most excited for is to continue the unraveling of this story and learn more about the world the game is set in. Because as it stands right now, the lore of Elden Ring contains more mysteries than definite answers, and the foundations of our story are shrouded in mystery. Now, that's not a bad thing and certainly not uncommon for a FromSoftware game, but it has left us with a lot of loose ends when trying to tie everything together, and I know I'm definitely not the only one that's ready for the answers the DLC is going to contain. So today I want to talk about the 5 biggest lore questions I have that I hope DLC answers, and while we will speculate a little bit, I'm going to do my best to tie them in with the things we can see in the teaser image. But as we get into all that today, I do want to remind you guys that once the channel hits 100k subscribers, I'm going to be giving away a copy of FromSoftware's next game, Armored Core 6, and all you got to do to enter that is number 1, be subscribed to the channel, number 2, leave a like on the video, and number 3, leave a comment in the comment section down below. But with all that, let's get into the video. The little teaser image we got for Elden Ring DLC, Shadow of the Erdtree, was enough to keep us occupied for a time, and we made a few videos breaking down the potential lore implications contained within it. And while at the moment nothing is confirmed, I do think we have a pretty accurate understanding of the main ideas. And while I'm not going to rehash all those points here, I do want to frame these questions from our understanding as presented in those videos. And the first one involves what's at the back of the image, and that is, what is the true nature of the Erdtree? Over the past year, I've been doing a lot of research into that exact topic because I wanted to make a dedicated video all about the Erdtree, as it's one of my favorite topics in all of the lore. Now, while all of that research did end up manifesting itself into many other videos, such as the mushroom theory and several points in the Discovery series, as I went further and further down the rabbit hole on the Erdtree, it became abundantly clear that we know almost nothing concrete about it. Every time I thought I was finally getting close to understanding it fully, a new possibility would emerge that would potentially undermine all of the work done thus far. But that's where DLC can come in. Now that we know the Erdtree is going to be one of the focal points of DLC, we may finally get to understand its true nature. And let me explain. At face value, just on the surface story that we get throughout the game, you would normally be led to believe that the Erdtree is a benevolent figure, granting all things good and holy to those that live in its shadow. However, upon closer inspection, you'll find some strange oddities that might challenge that belief, such as that the Erdtree itself and the other minor Erdtrees are fertilized with the bodies of the Lands Between's inhabitants being buried at their roots, and that the gold of the tree twists and wraps around a wooden tree beneath like an invasive vine, making you wonder what exactly is the true nature of the tree. In the DLC teaser, we can see the Erdtree robbed of its gold, being strangled by another tree that vaguely resembles Deathroot or the Haligtree, and leaking out some golden amber. But it raises a few questions as to why this might be happening. If the Erdtree is all good, why would someone want to kill it? What else out there is powerful enough to do this kind of damage? And what does this mean for the overall Lands Between and the people that inhabit it? Now, technically the answers to all those questions can be found in the story we already have, but there's an equal amount of theories and speculation and evidence that can point otherwise. And so that's why I hope DLC gives a better picture on the Erdtree, because every little bit of context we get about it ties the entire story together. But building off of that first question we talked about, the second question that I hope DLC addresses is, what were Miquellas' true intentions? From what we can hear in the game, we know Miquellas' main goal was to create and grow the Haligtree. However, due to Mohg's intervention, this did not come to its full fruition, and we now find the Haligtree half grown and withering. It seems like the Haligtree was meant to be a sanctuary, a home for lesser beings like the Albinaurics, but it raises a question of why exactly was this necessary? Again, like I mentioned earlier, at the time Miquella was around, the Erdtree was a figure of holy reverence, and I was personally always under the impression that Miquella made the Haligtree as a rival to the Erdtree. But why? The Haligtree Knight set tells us that the Haligtree ultimately failed to become an Erdtree, but we have no idea when the Haligtree was planted or why an alternate Erdtree might have been necessary. Understanding Miquella's intentions is honestly something really important when putting in context the entire story, because he's constantly described as one of the most pivotal characters, but we never get to hear his side of the story. But since it's all but confirmed that he's going to be the main character of the DLC, I'm sure once that story gets told, we're going to find out some very interesting things. Another main focal point that is shown in the image of the DLC teaser are these ghostly graves, potentially pointing to a lot of connections with those who live in death. And so the question that DLC could answer here is, what is the spirit world of Elden Ring? We touched on this a bit in the video Imagining Elden Ring DLC bosses based on the lore, but there's a very interesting subsection of Elden Ring's lore that describes a place place where the spirits go after they die, but not the ones blessed with a proper death, a realm for those lost in death. The Tibia Mariners are said to be the guides of those lost in death, who sail along the land in a boat, stirring up waters infected by Deathroot, and we can see this gray water flowing from the Eye of Godwyn after he is blasphemed with destined death. The symbolism here is very interesting, and it puts in context why our spirit horse Torrent, who resides in such a spirit world and is also seen in the DLC image, is named after harsh water. And it's interesting that destined death itself manifests as fire, considering that it is what caused the curse. We seem to know so much about the different types of fire in Elden Ring, but almost nothing about the other side of the coin. Perhaps we'll see a lot of water in the DLC and get to learn more about this spirit world. The concept of water in Elden Ring needs a whole video on its own, but it's such a fascinating topic I would hate to see it not get explored more when the DLC drops. Another question that I really want to see expanded upon in DLC is the extent of relationship between Miquella and the Carians and Radagon. There's an interesting segment in the lore that describes a relationship between Miquella and Radagon beyond simply being father and son. We can see an interesting dynamic between the two in the descriptions of the Triple Rings of Light incantation and Radagon's Rings of Light, where they're described as gifts to each other, with Radagon's Rings of Light being described as a gift of gratitude to Miquella. Gratitude for what though, we're not sure. But also in that description, it describes how Miquella ultimately abandoned Golden Order fundamentalism because it couldn't cure Malenia's scarlet rot. But while there appears to be a teacher and student dynamic between Radagon and Miquella, it harkens back to the question about Miquella's intentions. Why then would Miquella need to create his own Erdtree? Was it simply because Radagon couldn't help in his goal to cure Malenia? Or was there something else that drove him to abandon Radagon's help? Now all of that exchange right there takes place after Radagon left Caria, but there are several connections between Miquella and the Carian royals, the most notable being Loretta, who left her post as guard of Caria Manor to become a knight of the Hidetaka. But there's an old description in the 1.0 version of Elden Ring that describes how knights like Loretta were gifted to Miquella by Radagon, just like the Radagon's Rings of Light. But ultimately that description was cut, but it does draw into question this idea of whether or not Miquella was a traitor or if Radagon approved of his creation of the Hidetaka. There's a big picture here, one that further explores these two characters and their stories that we don't hear hardly anything about. Miquella is mysterious enough, but when it comes to Radagon, we know almost nothing. So I really hope we get more of this history in the DLC. But when it comes to history, the main question I want answered in this DLC is what made Godwyn so special. I'm not going to go super into detail about the relationship between Miquella and Godwyn, as we've covered that at length in other videos. But when it comes to the cause of the shattering, Godwyn's death played a major role. We know that his body became the infection of Deathroot, but we're never told why it was him specifically. Why was he chosen to be killed and cursed? And why is he called a martyr? We know Godwyn is called Godwyn the Golden, respected for his role in the war against the dragons. But we seemingly jump straight from that to him being killed in the Night of the Black Knives, with seemingly no explanation. Aside from the storytelling of Castle Sol that describes Godwyn as a comrade of Miquella, we really have no other context of his character. And to me, the gap there is way too fishy. With the descriptions of Godwyn as both a comrade and a martyr, we even have the possibility here that he might have willingly given himself up to be sacrificed and been a part of both Miquella and Ranni's plots. But it all leads us back to the question of why. But those are 5 main questions that I really hope DLC gives us some answers on. We've done so much theorizing and investigation over the past year that I'm really just ready to get some answers. But I am curious to see what questions you guys want to see get answered, and if you think we're actually going to get any, or if it's just going to add to the big web of mystery. Either way though, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to leave a like on it and subscribe if you're new around here, and with all that, I will catch you in the next one.